Hi,
Okay.
everyone. I am Jane Granis. For those of you, I see some names I've not seen before that have hopped on this webinar, and I'm so happy that you're able to join us. We're so excited to be able to bring this class, and we'll have others as well coming out throughout the year, courtesy of Weapon Brand. Safety is something that we haven't really addressed as part of the well-being program, but it really is not just for you and your family. So we're really excited to have Jamie and Brian Anderson here, and I will let them take it away.
Thank you so much. And Jane, we appreciate you and Pinellas County really investing in the safety of your employees. There are so many employers that we talk to out there that we bring this opportunity to them and they just choose to pass. And your employees are your most important asset. So the fact that Pinellas County is willing to invest in their employees makes me feel good about the county that we live in. We are cousins, even though we have the same last name. We are not married, but I am proud to introduce you to my business partner, Brian Anderson Needham. And Brian is a former U.S. Marine. He's a former sniper. He worked for the state of Ohio for over 20 years as a hostage negotiator, violent task force fugitive specialist, a use of force administrator, and a whole lot of other weird, crazy roles that you and I can never even imagine doing, including working with and training over 50,000 law enforcement parole corrections officers and special teams and special forces in the military. So you're in good hands. And for the next hour, we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to identify the bad guy before the bad guy does bad guy things. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat and we'll address those. This is part one of a two-part series. And then we do have 3 other topics coming up for a total of 8 classes with you guys. So we hope to see all of you back. And stick around for the end for a special offer from Weapon Brand.
Thanks, Jane. So all that stuff sounds pretty cool, right? If she only knew a lot of it was made up. So no, totally joking. Guys, welcome. And I want to start this off by saying thank you first and just filling you in on a little tidbit of information that I think will put you a little bit more at ease. We call this a class and we call it an event, but really what we'd like to do is just talk to you guys, just have a conversation. So understanding that, then it's a lot easier to ask questions and just kind of talk back and give us your feedback as well. So we don't want to be teaching you things so much. We want to be talking to you. So the first thing that we kick off a lot of our classes with in a lot of our conversations is visualization. So one thing that we're doing today, obviously we're not doing anything physical. But half the time that you're visualizing something, you are actually training, even if it's not something that's physical, it's still something that's in your head. And I want you to remember this statement that the body can't go where the mind's never been. So if I'm thinking something, if I'm visualizing something, if I'm actually playing a snenario out, half of us do this already in the shower when somebody upsets us throughout the day. I would tell them this, or I'm going to say this next time. Do this with your own safety and consider that part of your training. So most special operators will tell you, and that's the field that I was in for many years, that over 80% of our training is just fundamentals, visualization, and just going through the motions. A lot of times, as far as muscle memory goes, that's great. But if you don't have that visualization, and then on top of that, the conviction to actually do something, we're not going to say that you're going to fail, but it may not be as effective. So we're going to go into all those things, and we're going to start with just a very simple question. What would you do today if you were attacked? And I want you to sit back and actually visualize that. As grave as that may sound, I want you to sit there and think, if something were to happen today, what is your response? And before you comment or question about it, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that we hear most. The first thing we hear is, well, I'll punch them. And just FYI, a lot of this class is breaking up a lot of misconceptions. And by no means are we saying any of these things are wrong. but there's just more effective ways that we can go about it. So the number one thing we always hear is we're going to punch them. Number two, and they're not always in this order, but these are always the top three. Number two is I'm going to strike them to the groin. And you've probably all heard somebody say, well, I'm going to knee them in the nuts. That's what we hear. We hear this in class quite a bit, which is putting pressure or striking to the groin area. And the third is, especially when it has to do with kids, like if somebody's trying to attack me and we call our assets, our family or our kids, something that we're, in charge of protecting in a sense, we hear, well, I'm just going to lose my crap. I'm going to see red. And as much of a misconception as those things are, I still want to stand by the fact that still doing something is better than nothing. Even if you do those things and you survive, you called us up and you said, well, I actually did use a punch. We're going to tell you, good, you're a survivor. Now come back in, take some weapon brand classes, and let's teach you how to properly defend yourself more effectively, so you don't have to punch, right? And I'm going to explain these and break these down, why these are misconceptions. But before we do that, let's go into a scenario. I'm just going to paint a scenario for you. So for those of you that didn't visualize possibly encountering attack, I want to paint a picture for you. I want to give you a little scenario. And these scenarios that we give you are from real events. Like this actually really happened. So here's the scenario. You're pulling into a gas station. And as you pull in, you notice there's an individual that's just standing by the door, by the entry into the gas station. When you pull in, you get out of your vehicle, you notice the individual, you made eye contact, but then you forget your wallet or you forget your purse. So then you have to reach back into your vehicle. And in the time it took you to pause, turn around, get that purse or get that wallet, you come back out and now you're encountered by an attack. Now this person is actually fighting you, trying to attack you, trying to take something from you, whether that's your belongings, your life, or your body. In that situation, I want you to picture that. What do you do? Well, the very first thing we have to cover before any of that happens is you have to trust in your eyes and trust in your gut. The two things that I have to count on more than anything is believe in what I see and believe in what I feel. I have to believe in that gut feeling, that intuition. And I could ask you guys, whether there's 4 of you on here or 400, have you ever had a bad feeling about something, kind of a shady or seedy situation, and you actually went through with it? And when that happened, you made it, you're here. The majority of you guys probably never encountered anything because being attacked isn't probable, it's possible. We all know that there's more good people. At least we try to believe there's more good people out there than bad, but it only takes one person to change your life or one incident. So knowing that, I have to try to find that bad situation or that bad guy before it actually becomes bad. And to do that, I have to trust in my eyes. I have to trust in what I feel also. So with that being said, what am I looking for? If I asked everybody in this class, how would I avoid a bad situation like that? They would tell me, well, I have to have situational awareness. And we're going to dive into that situational awareness so you get a better grip on that, leaving the class here in just a few. But before we get to that, let's first start talking about our acronym. Our acronym is ARAR. The first A is simply accepting the fact that something could happen to you. And like I said, Jamie and I and everybody in Weapon Brand believes there's more good people out there than bad, but we don't always know who that bad is. And I'll give you an example of this. I would go into prisons periodically and I would teach their staff. And when I would go and I would ask, how many offenders do you have housed in this facility? And they would tell me 2,000. There's 2,000 individuals that are incarcerated in this prison. And as we all know, you aren't a bad person because you went to prison. You made a bad decision. Some end up turning bad and some, go in bad. However, they're not all bad, right? They just want to eat their chow. They want to write their letters, have their visitation, do their programming, go to church, their religious services. They want to do normal things just to work towards getting out or making their time a little bit easier. 1,999 we don't have to worry about. But we're missing one, right? When they told me there were 2,000, that means there's one that we just don't know about. So how do we find that individual before they find us? What are the signs? First, we have to accept it could happen to us. That first A is simply that. You guys, I don't have to talk you into this because you're you're on this the screen right now. You're actually in this class. However, your family may not believe it, or your friends may not believe it, or maybe you're on here just because you want to check it out. You want to see what cool things Weapon Brand has to offer, right? Regardless, just because it's never happened doesn't mean that it's not going to. Like I said, it's possible. It's not probable, but it is possible. And just that small possibility is the same reason I carry insurance. I didn't think yesterday when I backed into somebody, when I wrecked my vehicle, that I was going to need my insurance again on that day. Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks today's going to be the day that I get attacked. Today's going to be the day that I get to try out my skills, right? And if you are thinking that, you're probably in the wrong profession. So I didn't think yesterday when I woke up and I got in my vehicle and backing out, I didn't think that I was going to have to call my insurance to make a claim that I hit somebody. And I did. The reason we carry insurance is just because it's possible, but not probable. So with that same mentality, me accepting the fact that it could possibly happen opens me up then to the willingness to learn, and also that willingness to try to train or even listen to these types of talks and be involved in this, because it's not just about me. It's about the people that I love. It's about the people I care about. Everybody in here and everybody we teach, we ask, raise your hand if you have somebody that you care about. Now raise your hand if you have somebody that's counting on you to come home, or somebody that's counting on you to be okay. And everybody in here can raise their hand and agree with that. However, he'll fire and try to poke them in the eye. Who's this? Amanda. That's actually right on the same track of everything we teach. So Amanda, we may have you yell that out a little bit later. Not fire, but poke in the eye. We're going to talk about that. It's a great comment, and it's accurate. However, let's accept the fact it could happen to us because somebody's counting on us to come home. We just went over a scenario that you pulled into a gas station and you saw somebody that just looks a little bit off. And the individual that pulled in, she didn't pay attention to it. She actually continued to get gas and she was attacked. She made it out okay. However, she said, I felt something was off. And I can tell you guys this, a trainer of mine, a mentor of mine, and who became a training partner, we taught a lot of classes together, and I was in a lot of classes with him. And he always put this statement out there that I never truly, really believed wholeheartedly. He said 99% of people that get attacked have a bad gut feeling or bad intuition before it happens, whether it's hours or whether it's seconds. And, nobody, when you say 99%, that's kind of hard to believe. It's kind of really hard to grip that number, right? However, the majority of dash cam videos I've seen, or investigations, or testimonies that I've taken or been a part of, whether it's just through law enforcement or court cases, I can tell you that the high majority of those people said that very same thing. They said, I felt something was off and it happened. So maybe it's not 99%, but if I told everybody in here 50%, let's go 1 out of 2, 1 out of 2 of you, if you feel that gut feeling, you're likely going to be attacked, or it's likely going to happen. Still, half of you probably wouldn't believe it. However, if we put some things into perspective and we say, okay, half of you are going to have a chance at winning the lottery tonight. That means 100% of you guys in this talk today are going to go play the lottery. So look at those odds. I mean, that's winning money compared to going back to that person that you care about and love. So maybe if we start putting some things into perspective and say, you know what? My gut's telling me something's a little bit off. I just saw something, seems a little bit shady. I'm going to avoid this situation. Because guys, what's the one fight that we don't lose? That's the fight we don't get into, right? The fight that we avoid is the one fight we're sure not to lose. So if that individual, and forgive me for bringing up scenarios about bad situations, but that's how we learn, right? If she knew today that people were actually becoming safer from the mistakes that she made and still survived, I think that individual would be proud. I think she would be happy about that. But we learn off these bad situations, and that's what she did. She went in, she saw an individual, she forgot her purse, she leaned back in to get her purse. As she came out, she was face to face with an assailant, and now she was fighting for her life. And just FYI. He said later after he was caught, he was willing to take her body, her life, or her car, which is her belongings, so he would not get caught again. He was actually going back to prison. So people out of desperation will do anything. So that means we have to build a harder target for ourselves and our family. And that starts with A, accepting, and now R, recognizing those signs. So, how do we recognize those signs? And I've got great news for you guys. Um, I said 99% of people will have that bad intuition, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you a number that holds true every time, from my experience or training, and every single person we talk to and everything that we see. A predator will give three signs 100% of the time. They'll do three things literally 100% of the time before they attack. And right now, I got the hook in you. So you guys are wanting those three things, but I'm going to make you wait a little bit. First, we're going to talk about the R, recognizing. How do we recognize a bad situation or a bad person? And if you typed in situational awareness, you're right. All of us think we have situational awareness, and that's great. And every person in this talk right now, if I asked you, do you have good situational awareness? The majority, I'm sure, would say, yeah, I have my head on a swivel, like Jane mentioned earlier, and I know my surroundings. So that's great. However, if you were to teach me, or even furthermore, even better, if you were to teach your own kids, what does situational awareness look like? Without saying I have my head on a swivel or knowing my surroundings, what would you say? I'm just curious. Does anybody want to throw anything out there on how to teach your kids what situational awareness looks like?
If you do, you can type it in the chat box.
Yeah, and Jamie might even give you a prize. So I'm just going to tell you guys.
Well, I was
Go ahead,
going to
Amanda.
speak up.
Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
So I have an 11-year-old
Uh-huh.
who she's really bad with being aware of anything that's going on around her. So when I'm going out and doing stuff with her, I'll point things out to her, trying to help train her to
Yeah,
be more aware and see things like, so one of the probably goofy, I don't think it's goofy, things that I do is if I go somewhere, I park pretty far out.
yeah,
If it's dusk, I'll park under a light. And
good,
so when I'm walking up on my car, I'm kind of looking around to see if someone's
yeah,
hiding, but I'm also looking like under my car so I can see on the
good.
other side of my car
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see if there's anyone around. So I park in a place that's well lit. I park in a way, ideally, where no one else is going to come park near me. And then I'm trying to look around as I'm approaching my car. And I try to teach my daughter that.
yeah. Absolutely. And I see, and Amanda, I'm going to talk to you here in a second, and I'm going to give you some ideas to help your daughter. But Holly just threw out one of the best tips out there. Uh, Lose the cell phone. We're going
Oh,
to give you an
yeah.
example. Yeah, give you examples of things to do when you're sitting in your car and even before you walk out to your car. But what I can tell you is almost every, and we're human, guys. We're not going to pick on you because we do it ourselves. I mean, we're the self-defense people, and we still go to parades and concerts and things like that. And I was at a concert just somewhat recently with Jamie's boyfriend, Jamie. And for those of you that just joined up, you're really confused right now because you think that's my wife. It's Florida. No. So Jamie is not my wife. That's my cousin, FYI. But Jamie's boyfriend, Jamie, we were at a concert and we were like halfway into the first band. And I remember thinking, oh man, I haven't even looked where the exits are. Maybe because I had a trust in Jamie. He knows what he's doing. He does a lot of stuff with us, former military, but I felt that comfort. But at the same time, how often do we feel comfort because we're with somebody and we think, well, they got it, but maybe they don't. And maybe he thought the same thing about me, but it took halfway through that set before I started to realize, oh crap, like something were to kick off now. Where am I going? What are the exits? And we'll talk a little bit about that with once we get into the class with you guys as far as building a good home self-defense plan as well. However, looking for those exits and unorthodox exits, those are key, right? But the point is, it took me a little while, and I'm a self-defense person, so we can't really beat up on each other or beat up on ourselves if we lose that situational awareness, at least briefly, right? Because we are human. However, going back to a couple of tips, Amanda, that you can give your daughter. There's some certain target acquisition drills, and she may not understand it, and you guys may not understand it fully just yet, but I'll tell you how to incorporate it. A good target acquisition drill, and it's kind of fun. If you guys like to people watch, especially, picture yourself sitting in a park bench, right? And just tell yourself or tell your daughter, okay, so we're going to pick out everything that's red as far as anybody walking by. They have red shoes. Okay, there's one. They have a red belt. There's another one. Red coat. Good. Now we're not going to just follow anywhere, because what happens is when you look for that red, your brain will start looking for any shade of red. Even brown will start to kind of look red, right? So you're almost talking yourself into looking for these little keys, these little things that stand out, but now you get a little more strict with it. Okay, we're only looking for red, this shade of red, and you just start to narrow that down a little bit. It's a target acquisition drill that then you could start incorporating. Okay, now look for people that actually make eye contact with you, or look for things that just make you feel a little bit off, and you could start to incorporate those little drills. Here's another great thing that, Amanda, you reminded me of, is when you pull in somewhere.
Are you kidding me? What happened?
I don't know.
Are you just fine?
Oh, you can't?
Okay. Oh, you can
Yeah.
see us?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see you, everything.
We,
Okay. Something just cut out.
okay, we can start swearing. We can't see anybody.
Huh, we can see you.
Or the questions. Huh. That's all.
Uh,
Well, I'll keep talking while there they are. I'll keep talking while Jamie's messing with this, but something else. I know I had you guys on the edge of your seats, right? So yeah, hello. So one thing you could do, and we pass this to all of our classes, something that makes it kind of fun. And guys, I still do it. I'm 49 and I'm 39 and I still do this. But when you pull into a parking lot, tell yourself or tell your daughter when you're sitting there, let's just sit here an extra 30 seconds, even give it a minute, and pretend that we're the hungry tiger. And let's pick out the easiest victims that we can. And what are you going to see? You're going to see, just like we mentioned earlier, Holly mentioned, lose the cell phone. You're going to see people looking down at their cell phone. You're going to see people lose their car and hitting their fob, their horn to find their car. You're going to see people that notice you. And you're going to see people that don't notice you. So if you tell yourself or you tell whoever you're with, hey, let's just play a game. Let's pretend like we're the hungry tiger and we're going to find the easiest victims that we can find. Who's it going to be? And then just don't be like those people. Just the things that you learn from them, just don't do that. Now now you saw firsthand, this would make an easy target for me. And we're going to talk about characteristics of a good prey for a predator here in a few. However, that R is recognizing, AR, accept it could happen to you. Now R, recognize it. We have to recognize it through situational awareness. So let's get to those three things then that every single bad guy, every predator, animal or human, will do before they attack. And to do this, I want you guys to picture a cat. Does anybody in this talk have a cat at home, a domesticated cat? All of you. Great. Okay. So you all have cats. Everybody at least knows what a cat looks like, right? And then furthermore, everybody can picture what a cat looks like when they play. So if I had a cat and I have the little mouse toy and I threw that mouse toy, what's the very first thing that cat does? That cat acquires a target. It observes. So the very first thing the predator is going to do, they're going to observe their target. They're going to acquire their target, just like we were training earlier as far as looking for those red objects or somebody wearing different things of red. Well, now the bad guy, we have to understand they have to acquire a target. So they're going to acquire a target that to them looks like the best advantage possible. So them observing is the first key. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, the cat sees it And what if they see me walking through the parking lot? The second thing that I have to start looking for now is closing the distance. Are they starting to even subconsciously get closer to you, right? So before we go into that, before we even dive into what they're going to do to avoid obstacles and things like that, let's talk about acquiring a target. Let's talk about the really uncomfortable question that we get asked quite a bit. What do I do if somebody's making eye contact with me? We hear this, we get this question quite a bit. And guys, I'm here to tell you that it is different typically between males and females.
All right, I got more.
Yeah, go ahead, Amanda. Yeah, shoot.
So I apologize. Probably
No.
30 years ago is the community police officer gave me this information, including the poking of the eye and yelling something like fire, because a lot of
Uh-huh.
people kind of will tune the other stuff out because they don't want to get involved and say something
Sure.
that's a domestic or something like that.
Yeah.
So on what do you do when someone's making eye contact with you and maybe you're feeling a little sketchy?
Yeah.
Look at them back and say, "Hey, Bobby." And they'll kind of go, "What?" And you're like, "Oh, you're Joan's friend," and kind of like you're telling them that you can identify them, which obviously the intention is to get them to find another target.
Yeah. And listen, Amanda, I'm telling you, like these things are great. And what makes it great isn't even so much the actual act of what you're doing, but that you're forward thinking. You're already thinking about this. That's what we all need to do, right? However, I can tell you this, especially with a female, you want to try to limit that open engagement. You want to try to make sure that you're assertive enough to be able to close that door so there isn't that engagement. Now, you do want to make eye contact, but I'm gonna give you an example of acknowledging presence. How many of you guys go to Best Buy? Here's Jamie's time to shine. When you walk into Best Buy, what's the very first thing that happens?
Welcome to Best Buy.
That's right. And they don't even say it that enthusiastically, right? But they tell you, welcome to Best Buy. And what so many people don't realize is they're not just greeting you. And they do this at a lot of different department stores, right? I have bad news for you guys. If you think you went to Kohl's and they asked you, hey, how's your day? How can I help you find? Can I help you find something? When you told them, no, I'm just looking, they were relieved. They really don't want to help you typically. However, they're taught that, and sometimes even their supervisors that teach them don't even know why they're teaching them. But guys, that's a loss prevention tactic. That right there, acknowledging somebody's presence and then you acknowledging them back, now you're less apt to steal that TV from Best Buy. You know somebody saw you walking in. So let's take that and let's go to when you acknowledge somebody's presence, even just by eye contact, even just by a look or maybe a nod, they see now that you saw them. And Amanda, I like where your head is. I like, when you say, something about, Bobby and maybe mistaking them, but maybe now you can identify them. That's great. The only negative thing I would say with that is now you just open the door for more engagement. And if they're savvy in what they're doing, they're going to try to continue that conversation. And the entire time they're continuing the conversation, they're actually getting physically closer. And that's what we want to try to avoid. So your head's in the right place. But what I would say is, especially as a female, and some males, especially as a female, though, just because I'm a male, I know the feeling I get when I see somebody making eye contact and then opening the door for engagement, right? I've been a male my entire life. I have male friends, and that's typically the case. It's not always the case, but it is typically the case. However, what I want to do is I just want to make eye contact just so they know I acknowledge their presence and continue to move forward. If they do open that door for engagement, they continue to try. That's where I'm going to evaluate, I'm going to assess, and I'm going to be assertive with my answer that, hey, I got to get going. Sorry, I'd like to talk to you more, or I don't want anything that you're selling. Whatever it is, I'm going to be assertive, not aggressive, and then I'm going to move forward. Because the thing is, if you are assertive, you tell them that, and they continue pressing, now you know they want something. And before we go further into any of that, let's talk about characteristics of a prey, because that's ultimately what they are looking at you as. Some characteristics of a prey, of a good prey for a predator. Let's take ourselves out of the human element, right? Let's all picture animals. Let's all picture the animal kingdom. Let's picture the deer and the tiger, we'll say, or the gazelle and the tiger. What makes a good prey for that tiger? Not that it tastes good. What are some examples? Can anybody yell out some characteristics that would make a good prey?
Yell out
Could
and
I,
put them in the chat.
Or
could
put
I
it in the
say a
Small and
couple
slow.
things?
Hey, Paula. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the point which has to do with prey about like seeing a male, being a female. I believe that when I teach ladies that I believe you don't want to look down because you look like you're prey, like you're scared. You want to make eye contact, but you don't want to be overly friendly because unfortunately not most, but many males would say, "Oh, she's interested in me. She likes me." So,
Right.
getting back to that, I think a quick nod, eye contact, and then just keep on moving and be aware of your surroundings. But there's not a perfect answer for it. Like you said, each
Right.
situation is definitely different, but you don't want to appear afraid, weak. Your posture matters very much. But you do want to make some sort of contact. But I don't find myself having the perfect answer. It definitely depends
Yeah.
on the situation. So that's my opinion for that.
That's perfect, and it's so true that we get asked this question almost every single class, and it's that specific. What do I do if somebody makes eye contact with me, or if I see somebody? And every situation is going to dictate. Like Paula said, it could be, one situation could be vastly different from the next. However, I at least have to know bare minimum that I'm going to make some type of acknowledgement of their presence. They at least have to know that I saw them. That's it. Because one of the characteristics now is being unaware. Let's think about those animals again. Let's read some of these. Weak, yeah, weaker is a good characteristic. That's a good characteristic because that gives the predator an advantage. Slow and small, which that could be either way, right? If I'm slow, obviously that's a good characteristic for a good prey for a predator. And small, sometimes maybe a little bit faster, but smaller sometimes means weaker. It says if you're uncomfortable, I would be good. Look, you are talking to someone on the phone. That's great. So somebody else on the phone, more eyes, more ears, that gets away from being away from the pack, because that's another one. If the prey is away from the pack, they're alone, they're going to be a little bit more of a better target for a predator because they're alone. So even having that, make a call, that's great. And we could give you a scenario. We're going to give you a scenario actually in the next class about an elevator situation that has to do with this as well. However, and you're going to, I want to see that again when I say, what could she have done? I want to see, who is that? Valerie. I want to see Valerie put out there, make a phone call or fake a phone call, Valerie, for our next class for part 2. However, moving on.
Can I interrupt actually, though?
No.
I would be careful when you're making that phone call that you're still being present to what's happening, or making that, quote unquote phone call, that you are still being present to what's around you, because you don't want to be distracted by the phone and not paying attention, but to let them know that you still have somebody knowing where you're at and what's happening is good.
Right.
Well, the thing that I was saying was that act like you're talking on the phone. So it doesn't necessarily like just act like you're saying something to somebody, but you're totally aware of your surroundings because
Yep.
you're not really
Good
on the
move.
phone, but it just kind of appears that you're talking to somebody so that you can scream and then they know where you are, or you
Yeah,
can be
smart move.
describing where you are and they can then know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, smart move, Valerie. Some more characteristics. How about this one? How about the animal that goes to the same watering hole, same time of the day, every day, and causing predictability, right? Do we do that already as humans? Do we take our garbage out the same night? Do we get our mail the same time, same day? Do we leave for work? And then furthermore, do we drive to work the same exact way every single time we go? When we go to church, do we know, do our neighbors know, do people around us know, yep, this family, they go to church every Sunday, they leave at 10:45, and this is the time they get back. All those things become predictable. And I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm just saying just have an awareness about it. That's it. Just know, like we talked earlier, just be forward thinking about it. Just understand that. Some other characteristics are a little bit older, maybe injured. Like we said, predictability, smaller, like was mentioned, weaker, like was mentioned, away from the pack, being alone. Those are all, they make up one key thing for a predator over a prey, and that's it gives the predator an advantage. And the sad truth about it, everybody, is we all have those, every single one of us. We're the self-defense people, but somehow, some way, we fit into those categories, right? All of us do. We're all human. So understanding that, and just understanding that, once again, it's not probable, but it is possible. But because of that, because I have to carry insurance, well, now I'm just going to be aware of these things, and I'm going to try to make myself a little bit of a harder target just through my own awareness of that. And let me give you a pretty eye-opening statement from child predators. There's two things, and these aren't my words, these were theirs. Two things in particular that child predators look for. The number one thing that they mentioned they look for was they look for a father that can handle himself. That's the one thing, the very first thing that came out of the majority of their mouths. I look for a father that can handle himself, and then I'm going to avoid it. So just let's put that into perspective. It doesn't even have to be a father. That's just what they said. However, if somebody looks like they can handle themselves, picture what that looks like, visualize it. The second thing that they said is, I'm looking for the person that's not organized. So how do you look when you're walking? Are you going into buildings with shopping bags? Are you going into your home with shopping? Are you going into the parking lot, like we mentioned earlier, on your phone? Do you look disheveled, or do you look like you have purpose and you're going somewhere? Because you typically are probably avoiding things that you don't even realize it. And I'll give you an example of this. The analogy we use for bad guys that you're deflecting, that you don't even realize, is, let's think about a teacher or professor. Everybody's had a teacher or professor at some point in their life. I want you to picture that person. Now they're sitting in the front of the classroom. Can that professor or teacher pick out in the classroom who is doing a poor job on the test, or who isn't doing a great job on the test, we'll say, just through body language? The answer is yes, 100% yes, they can. They see that through body language. Well, the bad guys, our potential criminals are the teachers. They see all these people. And what happens is, when you are carrying yourself with a little bit more assertiveness, a little bit more organization, even if you have to fake the funk. Look, I'm one of those people that I'm not always organized. Jamie can attest to this, but you wouldn't be able to tell. So I carry myself like I'm organized. Well, just faking that funk, that could deflect what that person's looking for. And that person's looking for a chink in the arm. That person's looking for something that's going to give them some type of an advantage. So what I have to do is at least pretend. And sometimes when you pretend, that actually turns into organization, or it actually turns into something that you do naturally. So just even faking it, just looking organized, head up, head on a swivel, look at where you're going, and also notice the things surrounding, and then making eye contact with them, but also being assertive if they want to engage. Also having that assertiveness and respect for yourself to say, you know what, this conversation is going in a direction that I don't want it to go, or don't need it to go. So I'm going to put my foot down, because, guys, I want you to remember this statement. We do this consistently. And I want you to remember this statement, that we're giving the bad guys the benefit of the doubt. The bad guys' feelings aren't worth my life. As a matter of fact, any stranger's feelings aren't worth my life. So I'm going to stop giving them the keys to my life. I'm going to stop saying, well, I don't want to look like I'm going to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to look like I think they're a bad guy. Forget that. Do the eye and the gut test. And if something's telling you, it's time for me to walk away, simply do that. Walk away. No means no. And the way you carry yourself is going to be a huge deflection. If it's organized and you're acknowledging presence, it's a huge deflection to those potential predators, those potential bad guys. So understanding all of that now, do we have any questions up to this point? And just FYI, guys, last 10, 15 minutes of this, we're going to open this up for anything you fear or any kind of questions. And we're getting a little bit closer to that. But I'd like to finish up. But before we go, are there any questions so far up to that? Don't be afraid to walk or change direction after eye contact. That's perfect advice. Absolutely. And the other one says if you're
Suzanne, can
uncomfortable,
we hire you?
the pay is awesome.
Sorry,
All right,
sorry, Jane.
I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say you're at Best Buy and you're in the parking lot, and
Yeah,
you park out by the light because you know that's what you do.
sure.
And would it be advantageous either when you're coming in or going out to try to, like, safety in numbers, like walk
Always.
close with some other people, even if you
Yeah.
don't notice them?
Yep. Always. I mean, they may look at you a little bit off, but if you're walking somewhat close, because here's the thing, guys, the second that there's more eyes or there's more ears, that person is likely not going to attack you. There's more eyes to identify. There's more hands to help. So when I have more hands and more eyes on that subject, that means likely they're going to try to avoid it. They want somebody that's alone or somebody they feel is weaker, or somebody sometimes, and this is scary, that this may come up in a question, but somebody now I can use because of your young kids. So just keep that in mind as well. So even if your young kids are, a lot of times they're going to be better because it's going to be a better situation because there's more people, more eyes, more hands. However, they may also use that against you. And let's keep that in mind. We could talk about that here in a few because that's something really scary, right? However, let's get back to the recognizing because you guys are still waiting for two things that we haven't mentioned. One briefly we did. The bad guy is going to observe. They're going to observe. They're going to acquire a target. The second thing they're going to do, just like that cat's going to start stalking and creeping towards that toy mouse. They're going to try to gain a better vantage point. And they're going to do that by trying to avoid obstacles and things in their way. They'll do that even subconsciously. We do it already. If, right now, if we were in a classroom and we threw down $100 bill, first, everybody would look at it. Everybody would acquire the target. And then I said, okay, in 5 seconds, I'm going to let anybody run to that and get it. They can. Well, you're going to try before that to get things out of your way and get a clear path. And you're even going to do that subconsciously without even thinking. So I want you to picture somebody in a parking lot. They see you, they acquire that potential target, and now they start moving closer. So these are the things we want to start paying attention to. This is true situational awareness. If I see somebody now moving closer, now that gives me more options. I can get away faster. I can get to a crowd. I can maybe reach for whatever secondary device I have. I can get my keys to get in my vehicle, or I can simply go right back into the store. So those things now are giving me signs that says, okay, these are things I have to pay attention to. And the third thing that they do, literally 100% of the time, is they posture. And posture means things that we consider them pre-contact cues. They're things that the human will do physically right before the attack. Some of those things are clench my fists, clench my jaw, a stare. I may get flushed. I may touch my forearms or roll sleeves up because the hairs on my arms are standing up. I may touch the back of my neck. I'm going to shift my weight by shifting my dominant foot slightly to the rear, and my shoulder is going to move. Those are what's considered pre-contact cues. When you're in that type of space and those types of physical things are happening, now you don't have a choice. Now you have to do something. And that's act. Our second A, our third letter in the acronym is act. Act. Simply do something. And the analogy that I give you guys before we open this up for questions, and I'm going to give you a couple of little things, tangible things to take away from here. Somebody already mentioned one. Just so I don't let you guys go, and we're not leaving you guys just with open information, just so you have a little more confidence in physically being able to withstand an attack. We're going to get to that. It's the last thing we're going to talk about. However, acting, I'm going to give you this analogy that's going to make you kind of shake your head or scratch your head and say, well, scratch your head and say, man, that's putting it into perspective. That actually means something, right? How many guys speed? How many guys go down Route 275, Interstate 275, or for Paula, 80 or 76 up in Ohio? When you guys are speeding, if you're breaking the speed limit and you get caught, what's going to happen? Speeding ticket, right? But before that speeding ticket happens, maybe you see the trooper in the median. Very first thing you're thinking right now is slow down, let my foot off the accelerator, start hitting that brake, right? If that's not what you're saying, then you're probably used to speeding and you're, well, probably from Florida. But anyway, when I see that trooper, that means I acted. I recognize the sign of something that's going to give me a ticket, something that's negative. So I had to act. Well, just like that individual we talked about pulling into that gas station, when she saw that individual, she said she literally told law enforcement she got a bad, creepy feeling. As a matter of fact, her exact words were, I pulled in, we made eye contact, he gave me the heebie-jeebies. Those were her exact words. And he ended up attacking her. But if she would have avoided that, just like that trooper pulled out, because safety is not always convenient, she would have been a little bit late. And if you have an employer that you tell, hey, like this happened, I'm sorry, I'm 2 minutes later than what I was supposed to be here, and that employer says, not too bad. Now, if you're doing it consecutively, consistently, that's bad news, right? However, your employer is going to understand that. And if they don't, well, it's probably time to start looking into some things that are a little bit better for you and your family. Regardless, if I see a trooper, I feel it, I slow down, I act it. We're just asking you to do the same exact thing. Stop telling yourself it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen just because it's never happened, and start acting on it so it doesn't happen. Now, before we open it up for questions, I'm going to give you guys a real brief little uh, physical side of things on what to do if you were attacked, because obviously we're going to get some self-defense later in some later trainings. But for right now, I can't remember who said it earlier, but what she said was go to the eyes, yell fire and go to the eyes. Fire is great, but that also becomes a misconception that we talk about. We're going to talk about in the next class, and that's hoping and praying that people come help us. We're going to give you a scenario based off of that. And you just have to realize that, guys, you're your own first responder. So because you're a first responder, you have to be the one that you have to count on. If somebody else helps you, awesome. Buy them lunch and thank them. But don't count on it. We're going to give you a story in the next part that has to do with that. However, guys, me acting solely as my own first protector and my kids or my family or my friends' first protector, that's what's going to give you that conviction. And that's what you have to have. Before I tell you these things on what to do, it's going to sound gross and aggressive, but I want you to understand it's the most effective. And poking in the eye, there's only two places that your human brain have to contest with. That's your eyes and your throat. Even the groin doesn't fall into that category. The eyes, you automatically flinch when something is getting tossed towards your eyes. That's a human reactionary flinch. The throat, if I have pressure to the sides of my neck or the front, it either cuts off air, cuts off blood. My brain says, deal with this. My groin doesn't unless I'm in a training environment. That's a misconception. Now, it possibly could. We call that our third best. We call it the doorknob. However, what I want you guys to understand is if I can't avoid the fight, I want to learn how to recognize it. If I can't avoid it, I'm going to try to de-escalate it. If de-escalation isn't working by simply talking, that verbal judo, having my hands up, sending a message not just to the attacker, but to everybody surrounding. Now I'm going to have to close the distance. I got to fight fire with fire. I can't just continue to try to back up because he moves forward faster than I move backwards. Just keep that in mind. And running isn't always the option. Yes, we want to create space, but if I have my hand on you and you're trying to get away and I'm stronger, like we mentioned, a characteristic could be smaller or weaker, there's going to be you're going to have a really hard time getting away. Really difficult time. So what I want you to think about is this. You're going to take your fingers, exactly what you were born with. I know some of you guys right now are thinking I put keys in my fingers or I carry or pepper spray. We're going to talk about those in the next also. I like where your head is with those things, but know that those are considered secondary defensive devices. I wasn't born with those. I was born with my hands. I know I can reach my left hand with my eyes closed and touch it. I know where my hand is. So because of that, I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to dig his eyes out. I'm going to do everything I can. It's going to sound gross and aggressive, but put this into perspective. What's more gross? You ripping somebody's eyeball out that's trying to take you away from your family, or your family seeing you in a casket? I want you to think about that. Think about it deeply. And I want you to think there's not a chance that they're going to see me in a casket. I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight to the last breath, and it's not going to be mine. That's our fifth principle, guys. That's conviction. The conviction that I know somebody is waiting for me to get home, and how dare you try to take me away from my friends, my family, my job, the things that I love, the things that I love to do, my freedom, anything that you're trying to take away, how dare you? And because of that, I'm going to find that one bad cell of mine, that one angry, hateful cell. Because we're all good people. You wouldn't be if you wouldn't be here if you weren't good people. You're going to find that one bad thing about you, and you're going to drive on it. You're going to dig your fingers into those eye sockets and rip those eyes out. And if I can't do that, I'm going straight to the throat. Our number 3 principle is generate force to the best target of opportunity. Opportunity meaning proximity. How close are you? If I can't get to his eyes and I can't get to his throat, that then makes him the number 4, making the attacker the defender. Then I'm going to go to the groin, not to hurt this individual, but to get their hips pushed back. So then their face is now exposed. So we're going to talk a lot more about that in part 2, but we covered a lot of stuff about situational awareness and a little bit of a physical, tangible stuff you could take with you, at least to start thinking about. But before we start to really debrief this, I want you guys, if you guys have some questions, go ahead and throw them out there. Fears, questions, anything, any kind of misconceptions you believe, and let's hash this out.
Valerie, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, and then one where I had a scenario one time, long time ago.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times when I go out, even if I have bags in my hands, I do try to have that strong posture,
Mhm.
and I have it, and I'll look around, and especially like in holidays or Christmas or any certain times,
Yeah.
I'll walk. When I go into the car, I'll walk a distance, and if there's I can walk away, and I'll try and look underneath it, but I'll try and look around at the same time, and like try and like beep the horn or something like that.
Yeah,
And
sure.
hopefully that's something. But a long time ago, before we had the cell phones and stuff, I had, and this could be something for not just shopping if you're out at a club or something like that. I had gone home after a night, dancing with my friends, and I noticed, and I didn't notice that person in the club, but I know I was followed home. I was
Oh,
followed.
wow.
And then on the like different roads, but then I was on make sure I tried to lose him, and I knew something was wrong because I couldn't lose him, and his car kept getting like the space was closer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I remembered in the training when I did, I went to a gas station I knew of, and I pulled right up next to where the cashier window was, where so they would see me, and I
Uh,
stopped there, and the guy actually got out of his car and came
wow.
up to my window and said, "I didn't scare you, did I?" And I gave him a
Huh.
dirty look and I said no. And I sat in there and I waited until he left
Yeah.
a few minutes. And then I went home and made sure I wasn't followed. But just another thing, if somebody follows somebody from a mall or from anywhere and you know it, that's one place besides a police station or sheriff's that I was taught. So pull
Yeah.
up somewhere where they can see you.
And thanks for sharing that, Valerie. A couple of points on that. First, when you said you brought up a great point about the holiday season, right? When you're walking into a mall or into a store, if there's, a predator, if there's a tiger in that parking lot, what are you walking in with? They know you have money. You're walking in with money. If you're walking, or else you wouldn't be there. When you're walking out, now you're walking out with either A, money, B, merchandise, or C, both. So now you became just a greater target. So if I understand that, why I say the holidays, I'm glad you brought that up, is because there are more crimes during the holidays that have to do with those types of encounters than any other part of the year. But it could happen any day, regardless. Just keeping that in mind and knowing that should help us then give us that little extra oomph to have that head on a swivel when we do get to those public places. But you did great, and obviously you survived it. But one thing I would add, because the one thing you did, Valerie, was you went to where, like we said, you were away from the pack, right? So you went back with the pack. You got more eyes and more hands, and that's what you needed. However, what I would suggest is, because you can't always count on that cashier, right? Or you can't always count on the people at the gas station. What I would suggest is immediately when you know that this person's now starting to track you, I would call 911. I wouldn't drive to home. I wouldn't drive to where you live. I would drive to a police station or continue to drive and call 911 and give them the description. That's what I would do. Now you did great, and you using your head, getting somewhere a public place. That to me, I would say that would be the third best, and that was the best that you had that day. So congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you.
You survived it because that could have been bad. And it sounds to me just like that individual just wanted to be a bully. And unfortunately, we have those out there. Who knows what his intentions were? To me, it sounds like he was just trying to bully you because he saw now that we're scared. Regardless, they don't need our consent to attack us, and they don't need to know anything about us. They just decide they're going to, other than us giving them advantages. We want to try to cut those advantages. So great job, Valerie, on that. And thank you for sharing that. Is there, before we start to wrap this up, guys, is there another question?
I think Valerie had a question. We have time for one more and then just a couple quick announcements afterwards. And then we'll let you guys get back to your day. But we look forward to seeing you on Thursday again. We'll go over that after he answers Valerie's questions about what if they want your car or belongings?
Yeah.
Do you still go for the guys or give up your belongings?
So once again, that's a great question. Once again, situation is going to dictate. And here's what I could tell you guys. If somebody, just me personally, if somebody tried to rob me, they want my wallet or my belongings, they can have it. I'm going to give up whatever belongings I have. I can make those back, within time or through work. However, the second that one of two things or both, one or two things happen, I am now fighting for my life, and there's nothing else that I'm going to do other than that. And that's if they try to move me from point A to point B, and that point A to point B could be from one corner of the room to the other corner, or it could be from that corner of the room all the way back to their creepy apartment or car. The second I feel they're trying to move me, now I'm fighting. Understand that the statistics for you surviving once you move from one location to the next, no matter how small or big it is, the statistics for you surviving dramatically decrease. So I'm going to play the statistics on that part. I'm going to fight back. The second time is the second I feel that there's a threat of imminent life danger. If I feel that regardless, this guy has a gun to my head, just wants my wallet, I'm going to give him my wallet. But the very second I feel that now this is starting to go a little bit sideways, I'm going to do every single thing that I can, because what's the alternative, guys? I haven't watched it yet. My fiance actually brought this up. She started to watch the Boston Strangler, and she asked me, and there's something that he mentions in that. I don't know if he mentions in the actual show or not, but he did say in one of his testimonies that the reason that he will do it is because they let him. So the second that you're allowing something, now is the second they have the advantage. So I want you guys to think about that. And I want you guys to really dig in and think there's not a possible chance if I have that threat of imminent danger that I'm going to fight back. I'm not going to fight back. So guys, awesome questions.
Kathy, you asked him to please repeat the 3 things a predator does or exhibits before they attack. We will repeat those. I'm going to go over a few announcements, but